Welcome to Blackbird, episode number 49. My name is James, and today I am thrilled to bring you a very special interview that I did with Mr. Shane Hazel. Shane is, of course, a multi-time candidate for statewide office in the state of Georgia. He's the host of the Radical podcast. You probably heard him on Pete Q, Tom Woods, and a host of other shows. And I wanted to have him on to talk about his framing of the military-industrial complex as a murder cult, and also just how the libertarian movement can be served by anti-war veterans. You know, and obviously, me being me, I'm going to ask him a bunch of biographical questions so that we can get his background as well. He served in the Marines for a number of years, and that is where he became an anti-war military member. He's got a great story, a great podcast, and he is a wonderful speaker. So I just wanted to have him on and have a chat. Before we get started with Shane, let me tell you about Agorist Tax Advice. If you think back to episode number 23 of this show, you will remember attorney and tax specialist Matthew Searsley. He wants to help you find ways that you can legally avoid paying some of your taxes. Matt is an agorist and a libertarian whose goal is to cost the IRS and federal government money and help you save yours. He provides advice nationwide for federal taxes and also state-specific advice in the state of Texas. Matt Searsley is the Agorist tax attorney, and you can find him at agoristtaxadvice.com/blackbird. Once again, that is agoristtaxadvice.com/blackbird to sign up for your free consultation today. And with that, here is my conversation with Shane Hazel. Shane, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me on. Real pleasure. Appreciate it.
Good to see you again. All right. So for the handful of people who might not know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I was thinking about that. Somebody said that last night, man. I was like, man, that's crazy, right? Like, it's weird to be in this position where a lot of people are like, they know. My name's Shane Hazel. I run the podcast Radical. Was the Libertarian down here in Georgia that got blamed for spoiling the race for the Republicans. And I've run another U.S. House race as a Republican before that, where I tried to kind of do some asymmetric warfare and some psyops and see if there was any saving grace to the Republican Party. And I was just wrong and so many things with that. But, valuable life lesson. Obviously, back in late in my past, when I had my revelation, I was a Marine. I served with Force Reconnaissance. And I say served the guys we talked about, the murder cult, right? Like, it wasn't service to anybody that loves, life, liberty, and property or any of those things. But it was that's kind of my background. Just a pretty normal guy that's tired of a whole lot of the things that I'm kind of intense. So like it's getting to that point where I think you got to be loud and you got to talk about peace and you got to talk about principle. And if you're hoping somebody else is going to go out there and secure your life, liberty, and property for you, man, you're totally mistaken.
So why do you run as a libertarian rather than a Republican? I know you kind of said it's a bit of a shit show, but can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, so I did run as a Republican, and a lot of what I was thinking at the time, I couldn't even say, right? Like, I mean, I had in my first run, I couldn't talk about drugs. I couldn't talk about criminal justice reform. Like, it was, you go into these rooms, and if you start talking about these kind of things, it was like you were spitting on somebody's religion. And, it's just like, don't go in there and talk truth to a lot of things. And that really has a dampening message, not to mention, when you go in there and you do talk about these things, maybe not in front of the whole room, but if somebody else is, there are a lot of people in the Republican Party that are all about a lot of rights, but they vote for people that aren't, kind of thing. So you have these great conversations and you make great, headway with these people. But as soon as you get to more of the quote unquote leadership, man, it goes south fast, right? I mean, it's like, oh man, you can't do that. You can't talk about this. The whole, kind of this buffer around it in the political industry, really, it tells you what you can and cannot do to be successful. And if you touch those, the third rails, right, is what they call them for a reason. It's like, boy, get ready. And those parties, if you don't stay within those bounds, you're going to be a nobody. Like, you're going to be this person that they stab in the back, that they hate, that they talk about, that they, call names and everything else, and, do everything in their power to not only dissuade you, but to really dishearten. Right. And I mean, I always talk about, Democrats, so they'll just come up and knife you right in the stomach. It's the Republicans that talk about, rights and liberty and how America is amazing and free and all this other stuff. They will stab you right in the back and, high five their buddy and laugh as they walk off. Right. Like, that's the Republican Party. And I knew it wasn't salvageable after that. And I was just like, wow, like to have been who I was in that position, a guy who was a constitutionalist, a guy that knew everything about the Constitution, and to be, a Marine combat vet on top of it, and a, kind of a a hometown guy, like at the same time, it was just like, boy, if I was voting, that would have been the guy that I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm glad he's in this race, and I don't care if he is the underdog, like that's the guy. But that's not what they are. And so after that, man, I just decided, this is it. Like, I'm done. I can't do this. It's too big of a machine.
I think one of the most heroic things you've done is here recently, where you've gotten the mayor and is it the sheriff or the chief of police on the phone? And can you tell that story a little bit? It's
I'd love
really
to.
Touching. Actually, I was listening to that podcast when we were in Pennsylvania together, so I was actually able to talk to you in person about it, which is kind of cool. But
yeah, I mean, that it's funny. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. You had this one of my friend, a guy I consider a brother. He's also my jiu-jitsu instructor and my kids' instructors. So he's driving along. He's black, and he has a brand new 2021 Lincoln Navigator. And he's going through Holly Springs, and Holly Springs is just a little town south of where I live out here. And these guys are notorious for sitting on the interstate and grabbing people going by and pulling people out of cars and, really escalating traffic violations, right? So in this case, he just dropped off. They gave him kind of this, loaner, vehicle for his, Lincoln Navigator. Mm-hmm. And he's driving home. I mean, literally had just dropped it off, and I'm on the phone with him. Gets pulled over for absolutely no reason. Basically, he's got the dealership tags on the back, and he's rolling through an area where they like to use civil asset forfeiture. And so they pull him over, and they, basically make him prove his innocence, right? Like, he has to basically show papers. There's no ticket. There's no warning. At the end of the exchange, everybody goes away, thank God. But, I know his heart, and I know, he was like, dude, what are you pulling me over for, right? Like, he didn't say that. He said, at the end of the conversation, he's like, not everybody hates you guys, to the cop. And I, to be the bigger man and to, try to, I don't know, get out of that situation and say something to happen like that, I'm sure that just ate at him a little bit, right? Just a little bit. So I called the corporal of the guard that day, and he said he reviewed it and called me back, said it was good stuff. And I was like, cool, I'll talk to your chief on Monday. And that's when, the taped conversation came in. And, was pleasantly, I didn't cuss at him. I didn't swear at him. I didn't even yell at him. I just questioned him. And got to the point where I was like, hey, man, you're pulling people out of cars and making them prove their innocence in Holly Springs. He's like, you're not going to talk about, my officers like this. You're not going to disrespect us. And then he hung up on me after about, 10 minutes for the conversation. So I went and got in touch with the mayor and told him that if he doesn't at least sit down and have a conversation about, pulling people over and making them prove their innocence for, and exercising civil asset forfeiture, that I was going to bring my entire audience and everybody else that I could bring and mobilize to his doorstep. And on top of it, was going to request a grand jury, because this is this kind of stuff that's got us, that's where I'm at. I'm just like, all right, the fight's local. And if you can have these fights with your, and really a fight, if you can get to a mayor, you can get to your sheriffs, and you can have these conversations and spell it out for them, even within constitutional language, right? It's very easy to start maybe making some headway. And so they're actually reviewing a proclamation that I wrote that basically lists why this is unconstitutional, first and foremost. And now we're looking at, repealing civil asset forfeiture within Holly Springs so that they will never exercise civil asset forfeiture ever again. And, to be on the verge of something like that where we can replicate it and grab the other mayors within, our Cherokee County up here and the sheriff and just start to work and chip away at these things through the executive. It's just, I don't know, it makes a ton of sense to be able to do that kind of thing in this time where, things are crazy. And I think people see it. And it's, it's just de-escalation. Hey, it's an easy sell. You guys and your officers, the guy that died a couple weeks ago, that didn't have to happen. And we're not a better community because your officer died and that kid over there died because you guys escalated the situation. It was completely preventable. So, to have this hot iron right now and be talking about peace and bringing the community together, I think it's starting to happen a little bit. And I've kind of been in this gray zone for a while, but I'm starting to lean back into that, this optimistic area again, because I think people are fighting out of the prison now.
I think so too. And in lots of different areas. Do you think that you were able to get through to the chief and the mayor because of your profile as a Senate candidate, or is that just something people can do in a small town?
I think if you if you've been there for a while, you probably got a really good chance of being able to do that. I think it's being able to mobilize large groups of very, very strong people. And I don't mean it like just numbers and money. What I'm talking about is this is the community. This is, he's a jiu-jitsu instructor. He's created this, this community within our community that doesn't know, divide, right? We're family. Our kids roll together. We roll together. We spend, holidays together. We spend birthdays together. We're a family, and that's a family full of people that can murder you. Right. And I'm not, I don't mean that, but literally if you go to a jiu-jitsu tournament, right? You've got a room full of black belts and jiu-jitsu black belts. I mean, they can straight up, and everybody is super well behaved. They're just super polite, but at the core, man, those people are warriors. And to bring, veterans and all that kind of stuff together into this push of say, hey, we're real peaceful people, but you got to leave us alone, right? This isn't what you're supposed to be doing, and you're going to piss off the wrong people. And we're literally really, really asking you, please leave us alone because we don't want this to escalate further. And I think that really, at the end of the day, if a bully thinks he's going to get hit in the mouth, he's a lot less likely to pick on people.
Mm-hmm. Have you considered running for sheriff or some other local office?
I think, it's probably always been the long term. I think that's the office that I actually want to win. Yeah. Right. I don't see, the inroads in terms of power and a seat at the federal level, maybe not even at the state level, running for governor, but, to one day be able to scale back into my community that I've maybe helped, push some proclamations through for liberty, and they go, who the guy behind that was? That was him. So when it comes time to running for mayor or sheriff or something like that, it's maybe kind of a slam dunk. And that's when you really start to, be able to influence maybe the sheriffs around you, the mayors around you, maybe an entire region. And so that's, I think what I've got planned in my head one day is going to work. But it's a process, We'll see.
That's really cool. That actually gave me goosebumps. I think sheriff's the most important elected position for libertarians, in my opinion. I got that from Jason Stapleton years and years ago. He used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's switch gears. So, what's the murder cult?
Oh man. So this gets misconstrued a lot. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and actually define what it is. Being a giant fan of the prophets of the AntiFederalists, right?
Yeah.
They open up with the first, 3, 4, 5 Anti-Federalist papers, and they talk about the aristocratic combination and how, the Constitution was a coup of the United States by the aristocratically connected, the banks, the corporations, the government, so that they can, really control and print on top of that. So when you look at, this is the top echelon of the greatest industries, including government, that there possibly is. So it's your cabal. It's this unholy alliance where they, have monopolized force and use it to their advantage over regular people. And, it's got, I define it as a cult because it's got all the trappings of religion. We have sacred documents in terms of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We have, a clergy. We have, saints, and we have, people, the lords and, the commoners and all this kind of stuff. And you've got sacrifice, like no kidding, human sacrifice on top of everything. And it's just, you've got symbols like the flag, and you've got mantras, and you've got chants, and you've got this entire, quote unquote, moral system based around a monopoly of force that says you owe us allegiance, and they, it's the craziest thing in the world to me in 2021 that people can't just sit there and take a step back from the Democrat-Republican debate and go, oh yeah, we got bigger problems, right? Like it's pretty evident that, it's not just these guys, and it's not just, this group or that group. Like it was, I didn't think aristocratic combination went far enough because of the slaughter of innocent life around the planet. And even here in the United States, I mean, to have a prison population, I think topping 2 million now, being the most incarcerated, free country on earth. It's kind of it's a bizarro land. I was thinking about it driving home this, tonight. I was just like, man, things feel weird right now, man. And it's because there's more of their control than we've ever seen.
I saw a chart the other day, and it's a meme, but it's put out by Police the Police, so it's probably pretty accurate, showing the difference between the budgets for like the NYPD and the LAPD and the Chicago PD, like all these big cities, police departments, and like the entire armies of these tens of millions of population countries. Like NYPD has a $6 billion budget. The military of Vietnam has a $5.5 billion budget. It's just such an outsized difference. It's insane. So why murder cult? That's so provocative.
It's the most accurate description I've got, right? Like, I mean, these guys literally murder people, and it's democide. It's not just like ones and twos. Sure, they get their ones and twos, and they, the criminal justice system being what it is with qualified immunity and everything else, like they're not going to stand trial. And if they do, if it's a highly publicized, case, maybe 1 in 100 will actually, and maybe not even that, but, being fair is like maybe 1 in 100 will see the inside of a jail cell and at a reduced sentence. It's just, it's gotten to the point where, the police have become, judge, jury, and executioner. They, and the thing is it's like, it's not like the rank and file is necessarily the blame, kind of like the military, because, if you've never heard the ideas and the principles of liberty and you've just been indoctrinated your entire life since the age you were 5, it's, you've got this kind of this hangover of America is star spangled awesome. And I think you're probably questioning it at this point. I think, that's why spousal abuse and all that kind of stuff in terms of the executive branch is, through the roof. That's why suicides are through the roof. It's all of those things. But yeah, murder cult was just the most accurate description that I could possibly give these people. And kind of stuck, I'm not trying to be provocative. I'm just trying to be accurate.
It feels like America as a culture, I mean, from the Puritans on, has always had a fascination with death and like just really, really violent punitive measures, whether it's against, your local criminal or against Saddam Hussein's people. Where do you think that comes from?
That is a great question. I think it comes from a lack of empathy, a lack of patience, a lack of positive communication. And there is evil in the world. I don't know what it is, but a lot of times very narcissistic people are actually very good at talking, right? Because they talk more. And the thing is once they get a little bit of power, at that point things start to slip out of control, and they make some sort of justification for the use of force or stealing or whatever the case is. And man, by the end of it, you've got somebody who's justifying, sticking needles in people or, taking them and throw them in a cage or kill them because they got a plant or whatever. It's like there's a billion cases out there why people have been either harassed or caged or killed. And what's the old saying is like there's no law too petty that the government won't take your life for it. And a lot of those are instituted by banks. A lot of them are instituted by corporations, that are paying, to have legislation and bureaucracy pass for their advantage over their competition.
Do you think that things are getting better from a violence standpoint, maybe a state-imposed violence standpoint, or are they getting worse? I
feel like they are getting more well-known. I think they have gotten worse from the state side. I think it's a weird thing. I mean, you read, like Rise of the Warrior Cop, and like there's no arguing that, especially in our lifetimes, right? Like since the 80s, the amount of interaction and bad interaction between the public and police, which is government, obviously, that has gone up just through the roof. And it's because they've, taken a lot of, peaceful people and criminalized them. And that's where we've really messed up. And I think that's probably what fuels the violent nature of what America is, because at some point, peaceful people can only get pushed so far. And so when you see people, retaliate, whether it's been their life that's been destroyed because of a job or because their family has been killed or, whatever the case, it's like, man, those people have reached their last straw. They've been, probably used and abused one too many times by this. And that's getting more and more common just because of the amount of bureaucracy that there is.
Yeah. LB Muniz, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he was a recent guest on the show, many-time guest on the show, actually. And he pointed out that he's a traveling salesman. And when he's been driving around the country, and particularly in the Midwest, which is kind of his territory, he's noticed that flags are changing. People no longer have American flags on their bumpers. Now they have, Gadsden flags and Thin Blue Lives flags and
sometimes
rainbow flags and stuff. A lot of times it's a Thin Blue Line and a Gadsden flag. Yeah, and the fucking it's not Predator. What's the name of that? Oh,
the Punisher.
Punisher. Yeah. Jesus.
They're usually cops.
What do you other than the obvious, contradictions between "Don't Tread on Me" and also "Tread on Me Harder"?
Tread on me. Right.
What do you make of that? The kind of
tribalism, right? Yeah. Like we're finding we're getting back into corners, man. We're finding our own. There's the Boogaloo flag for us. A lot of times, it's got some versions out there. There's there's the anarchy flag. There's the black and yellow. You see even Antifa, they've got their own flag as well. It's what's happening is, we're in the middle of a revolution, and, until, last night somebody pointed it out to me, I was kind of like, this could go sideways pretty fast. And especially when, people start to go, oh, we can't come in there and we can't do those things. And we're also switching money at the same time into like things like crypto. That's when things happen. I mean, I was just actually reading Federalist paper or AntiFederalist paper number 37 the other night, and they're like, basically, warning. When you switch currencies, a lot of times that is followed by civil war. Oh. And I mean, like these guys, they've nailed it a million times. So it's just sitting there going like, hey guys, try peace for as long as absolutely possible. But I think we're backing into our tribal corners, man, where we feel comfortable, where our culture is honored, and we can, we think we can live in peace, basically. I think it's kind of where we're at. But I think there are a lot of communities out there that are, ready, prepared, and almost chomping at the bit to go kinetic, which, boy, I'll tell you what, if there's anything I have to say to anybody out there that's thinking about going kinetic, it's don't. That's what the state wants. And as soon as you go kinetic, that removes this buffer that we have, time equals distance and distance equals safety kind of deal, is what you're kind of taught in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is, hey, stay peaceful. If you stay peaceful, it gives you more time, and that equals, more safety for us to try to at least up our numbers in that amount of time, or unite with other tribes that are saying, hey, like we see what you're saying, and the last thing that we can have as an all-powerful, central government.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's hope of getting out of this nonviolently?
I think there is, for the most part. And I gotta hope that there is. Like right now, I think what you're seeing, and this is where I changed my mind to last night a little bit, is, this has always been a prison. This country has always been a prison for most people, one way or another. Whether it's through debt or through school or whatever the case is, it's just you live and you serve other people's interests, and you pay other people that have not contributed, a damn thing to, your success in life or your life, liberty, and property. And, any culture or people or tribes or anything like that, that's kind of a place where, you have to kind of qualify it as a prison type of country. And so I think what you're seeing now is a lot of people, very much led by libertarians, going, hey, we found the exit. We got it. We know we can do this. And you guys want to come with us? Like we're the people that are putting out a hand right now saying, we've got the key. Mm-hmm. And there's enough of us that if we rush out of here right now, we got this thing. You just got to be brave enough to take that first step and then take another and another and another. And it comes with education, which obviously doesn't happen overnight. But, I think as you get through kind of the bell curve, the early adopters, and then you got your wave that comes at the onset of that sloping up to the top of that bell curve. I think we're rapidly getting out of the early adopter stage now. And I think what we're getting is more or less the masses are starting to see what's going on.
So do you think all the infighting that we're seeing is a symptom of that?
Inside the LP?
Well, sort of the LP versus Agorist versus Phil Bishop's kind of resurrection of the Rothbardian strategy, all of that.
Yeah, it is growing. We are seeing the better ideas rise to the top where you can be consistent across the board, right? And that's really what it's about, is are your principles consistent all the way across the board? And if they are, I don't care if you're Phil Bishop or Eric Brakey or Tom Woods or Dave Smith, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you're fighting and you're working for liberty, I'm cool with whatever you're doing because you're talking to somebody that you think you could talk to. Well, I'm talking to people that I think I can talk to. Now, if people look at me and go, man, I can't stand, the F-bombs and the cussing and all that kind of stuff. They're like, hey, man, I'm not trying to reach you. That's like, those are maybe those guys over there, right? And these are good people and they're working their butt off. We just have different visions. We've got different backgrounds. We've got different tribes. And that's okay. But I can exist with Phil Bishop's tribe, right? Like they're going to let me exist. I'm going to let them exist. And, and we're going to try to do this stuff in peace. It's those tribes that are sitting there going, no, you got to do what we want you to do. Like take the vaccine, take 3 shots, mask up again. And, oh yeah, Delta Plus and all this other bullshit. They're like, no, man, like you guys are cool. Take your vaccines, wear your mask. I don't give a shit. Social distance, stay home. I don't care. Yeah. But I think, it's just part of our nature, I think, as people that haven't learned how to positively, communicate with each other. And it's another wrinkle in the idea that you have liberty figured out, right? Like at the end of the day, I can say I think I got liberty figured out, but maybe I don't for some people. And so it's more or less, I don't think I have it totally figured out. So you go do your kind of liberty and you let me do my kind of liberty and, maybe keep your shitty opinions to yourself, like in terms of strategy.
Yeah. Well, in terms of strategy, and then also, I mean, just the people who are so exclusionary, like the Mises Caucus is kind of a insurgent force inside of the Libertarian Party. And holy cow, that is very resented by the people who feel like they've built up this party. And here you come trying to shit on our little party. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we have our own messaging, and it's not decaf. You know what I mean? Like it's it's in 20 ounces of Red Bull, and maybe a line of cocaine, and I don't mean that to disparage anybody in the Mises Caucus. I love that energy. I love the fact that there is absolute outrage at what I consider the murder cult. I think there's, crimes against humanity that are happening all over the world right now. And, it can kind of be a scary place for a lot of people to sit there and voice those type of opinions, not only because they fear retribution, but they fear, social retribution and things like that. And that's, I get it. Trust me. Not everybody, is going to throw the gloves on and say, let's mix it up a little bit. And that's okay. Like, it's just, there's going to be bomb throwers, and then there's going to be those people that are just brilliant at being able to communicate ideas further, right? And take it maybe, okay, you're not quite over there with the bomb throwers in the Mises Caucus. That's okay, man. We got other things to do over here, right? Like, and they're cool with us doing that. So I really hope that's what it's starting to come to.
It's what it seems like. So I was using the murder cult language in an internal chat the other night, and it was not well received by one person in particular. I get it. Like, it's really incendiary language if you're not like in our circles. But on the other hand, I mean, I would expect libertarianism at the very bare minimum to hate war and hate, raining down death upon people. I was treated with a lot of things that you hear from military veterans, not necessarily libertarian ones. I've never experienced it from them in the past. But I'm wondering, are things like where you say like, oh, I bet you've never even left this country. What can you possibly know? How can you have an opinion? Is that kind of thing like, is that part of training? Like, why do so many people say that?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, there are things that it's not officially published or anything, but right, like, especially, and God bless them. I mean, I'm not here to disparage, people who are, who signed up out of, the patriotism and indoctrination that they were given, right? Like, that's not it. But they need to also understand that, hey, man, you have been indoctrinated. You have, and like, since you were 5, right? You probably never really, you never heard of the ideas and principles we're talking about. And that's okay, man. Like, I don't hate you. Like, I'm not, like, that's not it. And I don't expect you to get it, especially, in a short time span. What I'm going to tell you is what my perception is. And so when they're like, and can I cuss on your show?
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. And, you'll hear a lot of times like, and fuck that bitch, because, he's never done shit. His girlfriend or wife is over there getting stuffed by Jody when he's gone because he's not a man. And I mean, just, some of the most degrading, like,
jeez.
Just because you never put on a uniform or you never went to combat or, whatever it is. And that's the thing, is you have everybody from, guys in the infantry who were kind of badasses. And, that's what the infantry is supposed to be, to you guys that shuffle papers and make sure you get paid. And a lot of times it's worse from the supporting, parts of, that. So, I mean, seriously, you want to talk about dudes that will go out there and wear the grunt style shirts and all that. A lot of times it's not your combat vets, man. A lot of times it's the support that, is just clinging to something that they thought was meaningful once in their life. And you're just like, dude, you didn't even leave the wire. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And like, it's easy for me to say these kind of things because, been there and done that. And I'm like, dude, like, this hard ass bullshit, like, it's telling. It's not a badge of honor. It's not any of those things. When you wish bad things to other people, or don't think other people's opinions count because they haven't been in the military, like, man, you got a real making for an authoritarian regime with that kind of language.
I don't know if this is QAnon or what, but there's a conspiracy theory. So the whole thing is that Biden was never actually installed in the White House. He's living in Atlanta out of Tyler Perry's movie studio. And he's got the army backing him. And Trump is actually like running a shadow cabinet backed by the Marines, splitting his time between San Angelo, Texas and Mar-a-Lago, Florida. What do you think? Is that
I love, and here's the thing is, like, I wish they made movies as, like, if they took the plots of QAnon and they made movies, they'd be fantastic movies, right? Like, I mean, so much good, conspiracy theory. And I'll tell you what, people that don't like conspiracy theories, man, like, I don't know, like, I love conspiracy theories just because it's kind of a fun exercise, right? You're like, could it happen? Yeah, maybe, right? But no, I don't know, man. Like, here's the thing, and like my prediction is I think Trump was a New York Democrat. I think he always was a New York Democrat. When you look at his actions, the fact that he's got all the red-blooded truckers and, patriots and, the cops and everybody else just going, yeah, man, this guy's a Republican. This is his Republican. And you're like, dude, that guy's a New York Democrat. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's pro spying. He's anti-gun. He put Fauci in charge forever. He backed up with he's the guy that launched Warp Speed for the vaccines. And you just look at it and you guys can't see it because it looks plain as day. Not to mention, the Clintons were at his Mar-a-Lago, place, like joking around. They've got their arms around each other's wives. It looks like at one point that, Donald Trump had slapped, Bill Clinton in the dick in one of those pictures. Like he says, like my game, or something like these guys go back. They've got a history, and you don't invite people like the Clinton if you with them, and they're all tied to Jeff Epstein, and they're all tied to people like Oprah Winfrey, and who are the dudes over there? Who's the other guy that was convicted out of Hollywood? Real scumbag.
Oh, Weinstein,
right? Like these people are sick. Gross people that are all the same thing. And I don't think they give the keys to the White House to somebody they don't want in the White House. It's kind of where I'm at. Like this past time around, I think, it just illustrated to everybody that, man, it's kind of a rigged thing these days. And, what are you going to do about it? I think that's kind of, that was the goad, right? They tried to get people to actually really do something. And maybe they thought that, January 6th was going or supposed to be that day where they did something and they couldn't provoke it then. And I think they're desperate, calling people terrorists now. And just like, wow, what?
Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence that Trump was the biggest star on television when Jeff Zucker was running NBC. And then lo and behold, Jeff Zucker takes over CNN and all of a sudden Trump's the biggest star on television again. It just so happens to be on the news and not on entertainment channel.
Yeah. And here's the other thing is he gets kicked off of Twitter. Maybe he's tired of Twitter, man. Like I hate Twitter. Like, are you kidding? Are you going to suspend me from Twitter? You just made my life so much easier.
I would make so much more money if I wasn't spending hours a day on Twitter. Man, you're not kidding. I don't know if I want to take this to how can libertarians better relate with veterans or how can veterans better be libertarians? Yeah, why don't you riff on that? What can I, a non-vet, do to bring more vets into the party or the movement?
I'll tell you what, man, it's a proud tribe. Maybe too proud. And I will say that, like, as a guy that was a vet, like it's a rough pill to be like, yeah, man, I maybe did some really horrible shit that I'm never going to forget. And they can't take it, right? They won't take it. They especially won't take it from a civilian.
I noticed.
Indoctrination reasons, right? And so maybe point them to guys that, have, and say, hey, maybe go have a conversation with this dude. Cause I'll tell you right now, I've whacked the hornet's nest of status veterans multiple times. I've gotten docs over the past week. Like it is insane. Some of the hate and the thing is they're very directed. A lot of them are retired. They've got pensions. So they got a lot of time on Twitter. They're pissed off about everything right now. And, they've got skill sets. So, it's one of those things where be careful in what you're doing, because they also have, a lot of them have a capacity for violence, right? And, these guys they're done. Like, I think everybody is just about to that point where they're like, you got to stop. You got to leave us alone. And, status veterans, brother, it is a very, very, weird place. Now, if people are open to ideas, I don't know, man. It worked for me. It was John Taylor Gatto opened my eyes to the idea that I'd at least been indoctrinated. I was ready for that, to take that pill. And after I took that one, it was just try to find a life raft somewhere, try to find some purchase, some sort of reality, out there and keep, pushing, keep searching and stop believing everything that I was told. So maybe that's it, is maybe some John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah. I know that's kind of Shane Hazel's greatest hits, but talk about John Taylor Gatto. What does he talk about? And, how did his book end up on your bunk in a Marine tent or whatever Marines sleep in. I don't even know.
Yeah, well, it was a tent. It was a tent on the mech in Fallujah. So when we go and train and everything else, like our little platoon and most of the company is just very avid readers. This is before internet and all that kind of stuff. For the, like on your phone anyway. And so when you went places, you had a lot of downtime. And during that time, the team leaders through tradition were like, you're going to read books. You're going to bring something with you. You're going to learn either Marine Corps manuals or you can read something and, maybe even pass it around. So between deployments and through training and everything else where you're deployed away from either the barracks or your home life or whatever the case is, you come across guys that are extremely well read. Bright guys have fantastic philosophical, conversations, share, great books, whether it's, like John Taylor Gatto, for instance, or, books on war, or just anything, that, piques their interest. And sometimes a book will catch fire inside a platoon, right? It's like people are like, dude, have you read this? No, man. And then somebody else will chime in and say, oh, you've got to read this book, man. It's fascinating. And so, my buddy, I'll just call him Z, was, kind of in my inner book club circle. We read a lot of the same stuff at the time. And he's like, the one before that was The Emasculation of the American Boy that he gave me. Ooh. And then, he gave me this one and I was just like, oh man, like it was the aha moment. It was that moment for me where John Taylor Gatto basically, told everybody what school actually teaches, what the history of it was, why they don't teach the history of what the American school system is, and where it's going to take America. And I was just like, oh, holy shit, man. Like, I've just, like, to have that moment to be overseas serving a cabal after being, indoctrinated since I was a kid, that was that moment for me where I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm absolutely receptive to this. And so I think that's why it stuck. Yeah.
And so Gatto was like teacher of the year in New York and stuff, right? Like he was
multiple years in a row.
Yeah. So he was a big shot, like educator, like in the school systems who kind of knew this stuff and then wrote an expose, I guess.
30 years. And he wrote multiple books. And the thing is you don't get to be teacher of the year from the faculty. You get to be teacher of the year from the students. And so when you've got a teacher who's writing books and speaking out against the school system in America and in New York and highlighting how bad it is and what it actually does, and continues to get teacher, of the year after year for multiple years, it's like, boy, man, maybe we should figure out why this guy is who he is, because it's definitely not the system that's propping him up.
Do you think there's any chance a teacher like that could keep their job today?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't, cancel culture being what it is, the system being what it is. I don't know. Maybe
the
not.
Teachers unions. I mean, man, the teachers unions are single-handedly keeping kids out of school right now. Like, I mean, that's like one of the most powerful forces in American culture right now. That's insane.
Well, and thank God they are, right? So that's a weird thing in America right now. Like, the murder cult indoctrination youth camps, right? You would think Republicans would be like, oh, no, good. We don't need to ever send our kids back here ever again. Keep them shut down. Meanwhile, you've got the people from the progressive socialist communist side going, oh, no. We need to definitely not be in school right now. Which, what? Like, you're at the eve of a communist, maybe a communist revolution of some sort, or a communist revolution falling apart. I don't know. But I think, the whole thing is on its head right now in terms of making sense.
It's almost like, I don't know. Everything's kind of shifting right now. It's just weird how that's happening. And again, with the flags and all that stuff, we're all just kind of finding our tribes and not even really knowing that we're doing it. I think, like, I've made so many friends in the last year and a half. Like, it's just weird. And I haven't met them in person, but
when you do, you're like, oh, these are my people.
Yeah. Like we've been talking ongoing conversations for a year and a half. Like, we're all going to kind of descend on Orlando at Tom Woods's 2000th thing. And
don't tell anybody.
Yeah. I know. So yeah, I mean, all of this stuff, it's so much fun. I've been traveling more in the last year and a half than I have in my entire life just to meet up with people who I've never known. So I guess that's one good thing to come out of all this. One bad thing to come out of all of this, though, is, the vaccine passports that de Blasio's enacting and all of that stuff. I asked you earlier if you think that we can get out of this non-violently. And I don't even think that they're relying on like overt violence anymore. Michael Rectenwald talks about the Google archipelago, like where they don't even need gulags. Like they can just cancel your Twitter account and you're silenced. Do you think that this kind of soft fascism has a future, or are we going to overtake it somehow?
No, I think the blockchain is here to save us, honestly. Nice. And I really see that as just this giant hole in their whole plan. Like as people have to get smart on blockchain, they're going to get smart on blockchain. And I've talked to a lot of libertarians out there. The idea of this system called Hive that's coming. It's not quite mature yet, but it's a bunch of different platforms based on blockchain that are together. And that's immutable social media. It's immutable community. And, they'd have to shut the entire internet down to shut them down. So, nice. To have that as our way out to communicate, to understand the value of maybe a cryptocurrency or multiple cryptocurrencies or things like that. Like this is going to be, I think, where the plan really falls apart, on top of the fact that America's got about 500 million guns that we talk about. And I think there's probably another 500 million guns we don't talk about. And if you look around the world right now, America is quote unquote the freest place on earth because they know they can't get away with this shit yet. And not to mention all the heavy equipment and for this, all the bad, that comes from, quote unquote service to the country. You got a lot of dudes with a lot of experience right now that are real pissed off at, the system and the government. And boy, the last people I want to fight are these battle hardened, very pissed off people that have said, no, screw it. You know what? It's time to actually fight for liberty and justice and everything that we were told as kids. Like that's coming. Like if they don't stop and they don't leave us alone, like at some point, it's not what I want to see, but it's like, it's a good deterrent in the meantime.
Just kind of as a quick aside, but related to what you were just saying, I actually was just on a call today with an admissions person at Kingsland University. It's a for-profit place. It's not like an accredited state school or anything like that. Not that we need any more of those, but they have a whole blockchain developer program that's tied in with their full stack developer program. They're giving scholarships, and they're kind of like the apprenticeship program. Fuck, what's the name of it? Jesus. Isaac Morehouse's thing. Anyway, it's kind of like that. They're not charging tuition up front. You get a job, then you pay them back. And if anybody in the audience is interested in learning blockchain development, or you're between jobs or whatever, totally get into it because it's exciting and it's going to be lucrative and it's going to change the world. So anyway, that's at kingslanduniversity.com. That was not an ad. They don't have an affiliate program or anything like that. I'm just like totally on board with them, and I wish I could do it. If I wasn't 38 and already in a decent career, I'd probably just jump right on it. So anyway, so if you met a vet just on the street today and they wanted to hear your elevator pitch for liberty, what would you tell them?
So I actually had this conversation in Michigan with a vet that was another Marine, great guy, just wasn't down the road far enough. And I'm kind of, glad I was older to have the patience, to sit there and say, hey, listen, this isn't going to be easy for you, right? Like I was where you are, and I have kind of studied the point to where I am now. And Larry Sharpe had given a great speech earlier that day. Is like, hey, just because somebody says, hey, I'm joining the Libertarian Party, doesn't mean they're a libertarian, and there are different degrees, right? Yeah. So, my pitch for liberty with veterans is most of the time I find out where they are already primed to accept liberty, whether it's economics, whether it's culture, whether it's, the criminal justice side of things, wherever I can find common ground with them, And then, maybe you slip them a little bit of knowledge. The difference between somebody who's new to libertarianism and somebody who's a complete anarchist, right, is time. It's study. It's diving into places that they never talked about or never wanted you to find, and questioning everything that you possibly can after you figure out, like, oh shit, it's all a lie. Like, it's okay. So if it's all a lie, then what's the truth? Like, you just have to get the hungry to pursue learning again. And that's, sometimes the hardest part. One of the things I talk about, a lot of times is just, sharing your story with them. Because if you can sit there and tell them, hey man, I was a neocon once upon a time, and I was dumb and I got played for a fool. And, you kind of open yourself up to being vulnerable and human with them. They're a lot more likely to do the same with you. And at that point, that's when you can start at least having a conversation. Mm-hmm. The idea also has to be in your own head, is you got to manage some expectations. Just because you introduce somebody to, I don't know, economics in one lesson or something like that, doesn't mean they're going to be an anarchist tomorrow. It means they've got a long road ahead of them, and you need to be patient, and you need to maybe check in on them and grow them, and just, love on them as much as you can. Because you remember what those years were like. Yeah. Like, you remember, like, at first you were just pissed. You were just mad at the world. You're like, you got all this, you got all this new information, and all you see is a bunch of idiots around you. So you want to take a fastball of truth and peg them right in the face with it. And you're like, yeah, you're dumb as shit, you retard. And you're like, that's not how this works, right? It's like, back off, give them a softball or two, and really help them that way, and manage your own expectations of how fast, they're going to digest. That's on them. That's not on you.
That's my biggest downfall. And that's, it's why I don't feel like I'm a very good, ambassador for our cause. Man, I can go knock on people's doors and talk about a candidate all day long. I can write and interview people and stuff. But if you put me in front of somebody who's who I consider to be not a good libertarian, oh my God, I am not winning over hearts and minds.
I can be there too. Trust me, I've done the same thing. It's just like, oh man, I scared off an entire crowd of potential libertarians. Been there.
All right, cool. I guess since you told your red pill moment, I was asked this the other day, and I had to think, when did you go from minarchist to anarchist? And for me, I was listening to Lou Rockwell and Tom Woods, and I think it was Tom Woods. I know it was Lou Rockwell, and I assume it was Tom. I had been a Ron Paul guy since, whenever, 2008 or whatever. And so I thought libertarianism equals the Constitution, because that's what Ron Paul was always talking about. And Lou Rockwell on this interview goes, "No, I'm no fan of the Constitution, but," and I was like, wait, what? What do you mean you're not a fan of the Constitution? What does that even mean? You have mentioned a couple of times in this talk and a bunch of times on your podcast, the AntiFederalists. And today I saw a tweet from Thomas Massey, who he said something like, Thomas Massey is spreading extremist content. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers. Why don't you talk just for a minute about the Anti-Federalist Papers, what they are, who they were, and what got you into them?
Yeah, well, I needed to read the other side, right? I read the Federalists. I really had studied the Constitution as much as, I think you can without developing a psychosis.
Come out the other side like Judge Napolitano.
Right. And so, I get to that point, and in this, as I'm, talking to one of my friends while I'm reading the Anti-Federalists, they also introduced me like Lysander Spooner. And so to couple all these things together, the Anti-Federalists, a lot of anons, first and foremost, but Patrick Henry and golly, I wish I had a list of them right in front of me. But these guys were the guys that said, no, we don't need another level of government. And by the way, a lot of states in the Northeast, like Rhode Island, they're already past slavery. They don't want to be a part of this shit. You're gonna regress a civilization and centralize power in a place where you're not going to be able to touch it. And it's just a stepping stone for bigger things. And so, to talk about, fear and how they use, fear and money and everything else that they did, even, the same thing they do today. It's the same modus operandi. They called every bit of it. So I think that was kind of this slippery slope. And when I started picking up Rothbard, man, like at that point, between, Rothbard and the Mises Institute in general, boy, Jesus Christ, it's just like, you just get to that point to the very foundation of what the ideal society is. And it's based on the non-aggression principle. And it's based on two very simple rules that you can teach a 2-year-old. You don't hurt people, you don't take their stuff, and nothing changes that. Not age, not anything changes those two things. And so if you can be consistent across the board, with that kind of principle and make it easy, there's this great old saying that the genius of design is simplicity, right? And that's it. Like, that's where I get to is like, look, man, I'm a peaceful person out here on the mountain, not hurting anybody. If that's cool and you're cool, like, we can be cool kind of deal. It's like, I don't care if you're part of a commune, man, as long as you don't, force me in your stupid commune. Like, I don't care what you do over there. Cool. By all means. You want to do goat stuff? Do goat stuff. You want to grow things? Like, I don't care. Like, it's really your thing.
Cool. All right. Well, I have learned more about the Anti-Federalists from your podcast than I did in, however many years of school I've done. So you have done the world of service. What's weird is that, it's people like Patrick Henry and Sam Adams and John Hand. I mean, these are people, we've all heard of. We just didn't know that they were part of this like faction of like actual dissidents who were like opposed to the heroes that we learned about in school. It's insane.
Well, amazing to think that 10 years prior to these guys being anti-federalists, they were the leading names in the liberty movement, right? Yeah. And you're like, where did they go and what did they do in this time? And they fought like hell. They were not about to see everything they had fought for go centralized into a new kingdom. Mm-hmm. Not at the time in DC, but on its way to DC for sure.
All right, awesome. Well, why don't you plug your stuff and we can get out of here.
Hey man, I appreciate you having me on first and foremost. Thank you very, very much. This has been cool. Radicalpod.com is where you can find me, and Shane T. Hazel on Twitter. If you're into spicy Twitter kind of stuff, it's
a good follow.
Yeah, it's I have fun, man. I'm not trying to be a dick all the time, but there's some things that it can be fun. Like, I think it's more like I see it as more comedy than anything on there. But yeah, that's it. And I appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. See you later. All right. Thanks again to Shane for joining me today. And thanks to you, as always, for tuning in. Don't forget to check out Matt over at agoristaxadvice.com/Blackbird to schedule your absolutely free consultation with an attorney, tax specialist, and agorist. If you enjoy these interviews and would like to get a little bit of bonus content at the beginning of each one and would like to get them a week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks early, head over to blackbirdpodcast.com and sign up for one of the paid options. Right now, I believe it's only $7 a month. And once again, that's going to get you early access to the episodes, a little bit of pre-show banter, along with any other bonus content that I put out. And I promise you, there's going to be even more of that coming in the very near future. If sending me money isn't your thing, that's perfectly fine. You can head to blackbirdpodcast.com and sign up for free as well. Just put your email address in the box. That will make sure that you're notified anytime I put out any content, whether it be episodes of this show along with the show notes or written content, which I'm putting out a little bit more frequently now. Another way you can support the show is, of course, to leave a rating and review at iTunes. I really appreciate anybody who does that. So thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of Blackbird. Until then, live free.